Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
A little under the weather, but it's coming
Okay.
along.
Refuah Shleima.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Can't let yourself pampered. Are you going to the thing tonight?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
coming?
if I feel up to it, I will. Planning to.
Hi. Hello. Hello, hello.
Oh, Johnny, was machst du, Johnny? How's Helene feeling?
She's good. Feels well.
Good, Baruch Hashem.
She was here tonight.
Okay.
Got rid of it. So it's called for what, 7:30, right?
Yeah. It's cool for 7:30. You'll be there too, John.
Yeah.
Good.
Give me something to do.
Right. Okay.
No, where's Ernesto? He's probably preparing the refreshments.
Yeah, probably.
He's always with the refreshments.
Oh,
Good evening, everybody.
hello.
We are on Daf Chaf Aleph.
There.
So we had a problem because Rebbe holds that you do put salt on wood, on eitzim, and the Bryce is, so ofik eitzim violence. You have to take out the word eitzim, which was the Bryce that said it doesn't get salted, and you put in the wine libations. That is the wine.
Ernie, don't you eat the mincha?
Correct. That's the chiddush of Rebbe, Johnny, and he considered the wood itself to be a mincha. And that's why we had to do.
But you can eat it. You can eat it. No.
But there are other menachos that are not eaten. For example, the minchas kohanim, when a kohen donated a mincha, it was completely burned. The kohen gadol would offer every day the minchas chavitin, was not eaten, would be completely burnt. The minchas tachim, the wine libations, are completely burned. So it's not an unprecedented thing that a mincha would be completely burned. So Rebbe, who holds that in some respects he treated wood like a mincha, and it's only Rebbe. The other chacham don't agree. It does not have the status of a mincha, and therefore doesn't need to be salted. But according to Rebbe, it needs to be salted, and therefore, what's excluded from salting? Nesachim, wine libations. The Tanya v'layayin ve'adam va'etz v'aktaris ein te'unin melech. There's a brisa that says wine, dam, wood, and ktoris do not require melech. And the Gemara wants to know, Mani, who is the author of this brisa? Rebbe kash eitzim. Can't be Rebbe, because we already determined that Rebbe holds you do salt eitzim. And this brisa says you don't salt eitzim. So it can't be Rebbe. Rabbanon kash ktoris. The incense that was offered in the Mizbech Hazov inside was also salted according to Chachamim. So this brisa that says the Ketores was not salted cannot be the Rabbanon. So the Gemara says, Hi Tanu. It's the following, the Tanya. Rabbi Yishmael b'noish Rabbi Yochanan Rebroka Oimer. That the Pratu Klal that we learned with that Pasuk, he says, Ma prat mefurish davar shemakabel tuma. He learned differently. A mincha is food, and therefore it's makabel tuma. And oil ishim, you burn it. V'yesh lam mizbech achitzon, the kmitza is done on the outside mizbech, not the inside mizbech. Av kol, so this gives us the criteria as to what is salted. It's got to be davar makabel tuma. V'oil ishim, and it's put on the fire. V'yesh lam mizbech achitzon. So therefore, yotzu eitzim she'ein makabel tuma. Only food and kalim are makabel tuma. Wood is not is neither, and therefore it's not makabel tuma. So eitzim don't fit this criteria. Therefore, it's not salted. Yotzu dam v'yayin shein olim liishim. The yayin is poured down those special shisin like pipes. Wasn't put on the fire, and the dam is put on the corners of the mizbeach. And yotza ktoris she'ein al mizbech achitzon. And the ktoris is also not salted because it's not put on the external mizbech, it's only put on the internal mizbech. So the baraisa that excluded all these things, dam and eitzim and yayin and ktoris, is the sheet of Rabbi Shmuel b'noish Rav Yochanan B'Broika. So we had a pasuk. Al kol minchascha yasu melach velo al damcha. So the Torah gave us a pasuk to exclude dam from being salted. Taima demiate krala dam. It's only because there's a pasuk. Haylav hachi avemina dam liboy melach. Comes out without that pasuk. Avemina would be that dam does require being salted. But there's a problem with that. Kivin de malchei nofik le mitoras dam. The Gemara is going to bring us proofs that once you salt dam, it's not called dam anymore. It takes it out of the status of dam. So therefore, you're not salting the dam. Dam shebishlu. We're talking about when you eat dam and you get kores, there's some leniencies. dam shebishlu eino over alav. There's no prohibition consuming dam that was cooked. And it's also therefore not applicable to use that for kachim, because it's not considered dam anymore. Rav Yudamar Zeiri, dam shemalchu and over. If you salt dam and you eat it, you're not over, because we have a principle, maliyah chareu karoseach. When I learned Yoredeya, one of the three areas that you study taruvis, you study basar b'cholov, and you study malicha. The whole point of malicha is like it's cooking something. So when you salt meat, it can transfer taste between items like heat does. So salting blood is like cooking blood. You have the limbs of an ola that you that you roasted, and then you put it up on the mizbech. It lacks the reach nechok. It doesn't have that smell of raw meat being cooked. So if when you salt blood, there's no chiyuv of eating it, then it's not roy for kachim anymore. So Ma'adasai thought, you see, just put a little bit of salt to be yotze the mitzvah of salting, but not of making the blood considered cooked. Kamash malan, that bichlal, blood doesn't need salt at all. Gufa. Amr Zir Rav Chanina, dam shebishlu, eino oiver alav. Cooked blood, there's no prohibition against consuming it. Yosef Rav Kamer Lalai Shmaitza. Eitzvi Abaya, Hikfas Adam V'achlo. Let's say you allowed the blood to coagulate, became hard. Or it dissolved, became liquid, and you swallowed it. In both cases, chayiv. And how do you coagulate it? You apply heat. So this seems to be going against the Iri. Loikasha kanche hikva ba'or. Depends. If you harden it with fire, so then it's completely puzzle for kachim. And then you would, and then therefore you would not get a punishment for eating it. But let's say it hardened in the sunlight. Sunlight, later on it become liquid again. And therefore it remains dam. And therefore you'd be chai for eating it. We have a principle by Kodshim. Once it's been pushed away, it's pushed away, and you can't resuscitate it. So maybe the same thing, a person would not be chai for eating it. The following question was asked: Dam shekarash v'achlo. Blood that became coagulated, you ate it. What's the din? Once it's not roy anymore, it's not roy for kachim. It's not in the same category. Ishtik Rava was quiet. Armalei, why Abaya says to Rava, Dilma Vadai kan bechatois hachitzonios. The Baraisa is talking about that kind of blood, which said that, meaning blood that's applied on an external mizbeach. And Khan Zeiri was talking about chatas apnimios. The chatas achitzonios, even when they become hard, they're okay. Think about it. When you do zrika on the paroichas, it's got to be liquid because it's got to splatter. But you don't need that for the external mizbeach. So in the internal mizbeach, when it becomes hard, then it's not in the category of dam anymore. Amar ad kartan milsadam Rav Chisda. You reminded me of something Rav Chisda said. Dam shekorsh b'chatos hachitzonios. You have blood that became coagulated with an outside chatas v'ach lo chayiv. Because there it's roy to be used as kodshim. V'lokach v'nosan amrachmana v'hai bar lachin nesinu. You can apply the blood. However, if the blood that became hardened was b'chatos apnimos v'achlo, was the inner chatas, like par helam davar shel tzibor, par yom kippurim, potter. It says v'tova, you have to dip your finger in it, v'hizon, and spray it or sprinkle it. And if it's solid, high lav bar tefillah vazohu. Once it's hard, it doesn't qualify. Since it doesn't qualify for kosher, it doesn't qualify to give you the punishment for eating it. Rava didei amar, afilu b'chatos apnimios v'achlo chayiv. Rava held himself that if the dam of v'chatos apnimios hardened and you ate it, you're still chayiv. Because in the general category, hola kenegdo roy b'chatos achitzonos. Since hardened blood can be used for outside chitzonios, you're going to, it's like a gzeira. You're going to mix it up. So it's chayiv no matter what. Amrav Papa Hilkach, Dam Chamor Shekorash v'achalo. So it's a hardened blood din. It's not a din in kodshim, because a chamor's blood is not used in kodshim. Since hardened blood can be used for the service of the chatos chitzonios, even hardened donkey blood, you would be chayv if you ate it. Amrav Gidel Amar Zeiri, Dam ben lach ben yavish chotzes. You need to go in the mikveh to be metayr yourself. You're not allowed to have a chatzitza between the water and your skin. So Rav Gidel Amar Zeiri says, dam, whether it's moist or dry, it's a chatzitza, and it will puzzle the tefillah. Meisvei, hadam v'adyoy v'advash v'acholav, ink, blood, honey, and milk, yiveshin choytzitzin. If they're dried, it's a chatzitza. Lachin ein a choytzitzin. Kashan ziri, loy kasha. Had sorich. Sorich means it's like sticky. And therefore, the water won't, it's like waterproofing. Therefore, the water will not come in contact with the person's body. Therefore, the tefillah is not good. If the blood is very liquidy, it's not sticky, then it's not a chatzitza. The pasuk says, "Bamelach timlach." So timlach l'mayasa. What did it come to teach? L'chadetanya. It says Bamelach. Yachol tivoneu. We don't know what that means, but it means to apply a thick layer. Tamad lomer timlach. I timlach yachol b'mei melach. Maybe I could use salt water. Tamad lomer b'melach. Then it says v'lo tashbis melach. Don't get rid of the salt. Havei melach she'ena shoveses, which means bring a salt that doesn't lose its, or we have that salt all around the whole year. Vezezu melach doimis. Melach that comes from stone, from the Dead Sea. If you can't find salt from the Dead Sea, you can use this other melach. Takriv koshu. Any kind of salt can be used. Takriv mikol mokom. Even from outside of Eretz Yisrael. Takriv afilu b'Shabbos. You can apply melach even on Shabbos. Takriv afilu b'tuma. Even if somebody's tummy, you can apply salt to it. Now, we had a havamina of Yachol Tivoneu. We didn't know what that means. Mayu Tivoneu. Amar Ulachi Kamar. Yachol Yidbonenu. It means it's Keteven Batid. Becomes very heavy, like straw being put into clay to make bricks. So a lot of salt. It should say yidbonenu. Elam Rabaya, Yachol Tavoneu means Yachol Yasenu Kevinyan. You have to put layers upon layers of salt, like a structure. Armale Rava Ihachi Yivnenu Miboile. Elam Rava Yachol Tavoneu. What's that? My Tavoneu. Arvashi Yachol Yitin Botam Kabina. Just a small amount of salt. A person just has a little bina to make him smart. Talmud Lomar Timlach, which means you might think Bamelach with just a little bit. Double language, he has to be a lot. So how do you do it? Maybe Aver, you bring the limb, the Noisan Lav Melach, you put salt, the Choyzer Voich, and you put it on the other side. Umalei. Or Rabbi V'chelik Deira. When you salt meat, in order to get rid of its blood, that's the kind of salting you have to do too, on each side. Rashi says, "Ein sarach l'moicha yoser." Not any more than that. Torah Rabbana. Melach shal gabi ha'ever. Salt on a limb. We're talking about a limb of an ola. Mo'alim bo. If you have benefit from that, you're chayv mila. Shal gabi ha'kevesh. If it's on the ramp, let's say some salt spilled there, or barosh Hashem mizbech on top of the mizbech, ein mo'alim bo. Bamar of Masa Micro, what's the pasuk? The kraftem lifnei Hashem. This is in Yechezkel. V'shlichu hakonim alei melech ve'elu asam olu Hashem. So it's part of the ola. So you're not allowed to be moil in the oil, you're not allowed to be moil in the salt. Tanan haso. Ala melech v'la'etzim shiyu hakohanim neosim bahem. Kohanim are allowed to benefit from the salt that's on the wood, and in general the salt that was used. That's when they're processing their korbanos. Avalachila, no, low. But for their own personal eating, they can't use the melach. What does that mean? Limloch korbanom. That means the korbanos that they're offering before they burn them. And what does lachila mean? Achila is kochim when they eat the meat of a chatas or an asham. Hashlim loch oiros kochim yavinon. We've just been told, for example, to use salt to salt the oiros, the hides that they're allowed to keep. They're allowed to do it. Lachila is kochim lo yavina. Why wouldn't we give them to benefit with the melach for their food? Where do you see that the Kohanim are allowed to salt their hides? Titania. Nimtzitzata oimer. Bishloisha makoimes hamelach nasuna. Salt was applied 3 places. Belishkas hamelach. There was a specific office where the salt was stored. Al gabi hakevesh on the ramp. V'rosh shel mizbech on top of the mizbech. Belishkas hamelach shesham molchin ores kochim. The place where the salt was, they also used to salt the hides. And they get the Kohanim, it's personal property for them. If you don't salt them soon enough, they would go bad. Al gabi hakevesh, what's salted on the ramp? Shesham molchin esayvorim. An ola, after it was shechted, was cut into pieces. The pieces were laid on the ramp, and then from the ramp, they were put on the mizbeach. They were salted there on the ramp. Why was there salt also berosh Hashem mizbech? Shesham molchin hakoimetz. The kmitza was salted on the top of the mizbech. Valavoina, the salt on the lavoina was done there. Haktoires, we're talking about the Torah that was offered in the mizbech hazav. Uminchas kohanim, a mincha that the Kohanim would offer, which is completely burned. Minchas Kor Mashiach, the minchas Chavitim, which is also completely burned. Uminchas Nesachim, the wine libations that also were salted. So you see clearly that the hides that were given to Kohanim, the salt was put there. If they're allowed to use it for that, they certainly could use it when they eat food. So what does it mean, Elamayla Korbanim, Lachilas Korbanim? We're not talking about when the Kohen brings his own shlomim and he has to eat meat. But we're talking about when Yisraelim bring let's say, a chatas and an osham, and the Kohanim get to eat the meat of that, or the chazah and the shok of a shlomim that are given to the Kohanim as well. That's called korbanim. They can salt that. And it can, even though it belongs to the Beis HaMikdash, the salt. Umay lachila, achila is the chulin. Achila means the regular eating of not kodshim meat, and that they cannot use salt that came from the Beis HaMikdash. Well, chulin pshita. Well, how could you bring chulin there? My ba'asam. Avagav da Omer Mar yoichlu. It says vanoiseres b'mena yochlu aron avanav. The shirayim of the mincha can be eaten by the kohanim. B'chatzar oel moed yochlu. So maybe sheyochlu ima chulin u'truma. I might think that the kohanim can eat the mincha along with his chulin and truma. Kedei shenechelas ala soivas, so that there's a special quality that the kodshim food should be eaten when he's full, like the korban pesach. That's like b'malchus. We don't allow them to use Beis HaMikdash salt when they're eating their chulin. But they could eat their chulin, but they can't use the salt of the Beis HaMikdash. Armin Ravina Ravashi. And Hochanami Mistavra, this is logical what we just said. When it says that they're allowed to salt their korbanim, it means to salt it, and let's say they're korbanos that are going to be burnt on the mizbeach. Time adosni based because Beis-Din made a t'nai Beis-Din that the melech could be used for that purpose. Halo asni Beis-Din lo, but if Beis-Din did not make the t'nai, they would not have been able to use it. Now, hashta, you've been learning that when we talk about now this salting, referring to their korbanos, but li Yisrael yavina, when Klal Yisrael brings certain korbanos and we're salting it, so we're giving it to Klal Yisrael. The Kohanim lo yavina. Why shouldn't we give the Kohanim salt from the Beis HaMikdash? So it's not referring to the korbanos, but it's the part of the meat that they eat, like a chatas and osham or the chaz of a shok. Where do you see that Yisraelim can benefit from salt based in the Beis HaMikdash? The Tanya. Yachal omer alai mincha. When a Yisrael donates a mincha to the Beis HaMikdash, he has to bring flour and oil from his home, and has to be miskadish in a kli sharis. I might think Yavi Melech mitoch beso, he has to bring the salt as well. Kederch shemevi levona b'toch beso. The spice he has to bring, but l'chora the salt is. I might think he has to bring the salt. The dinu nemar havei mincha vehevi melech. The nemar hevi mincha vehevi levona. Ma levona mitoch beso, af melech mitoch beso. So melech and levona are comparable. They both have to be brought. And maybe they have to be brought from his own asset, not from the Beis HaMikdash. Oh, klach l'derzu. Or you could follow the following shot. Nemar hevi mincha vevi melach. The nemar hevi mincha vevi eitzim. Ma eitzim yishal tzibur. The wood to burn your mincha doesn't have to come from your home. You could use Beis HaMikdash wood. Af melach mishal tzibur. So therefore, that tells us that we should use salt for the Beis HaMikdash. Nira l'mi doime. Is our melach more comparable to levona or more comparable to wood? Donin dovra noi b'chol hazvachim and dobra noi b'chol hazvachim. I'd rather compare something to something that holds by all korbanos. So all korbanos need melach, and all korbanos need wood. V'al toichich levoina she'einu neges b'chol hazvachim. The levona is not used only on menachos. So there's much more in harmony between eitzim and between melach. So we should say, just like the eitzim can be used, mishal tzibur belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, there's some melach too. O klach l'derech zu. Dover abo imo b'kli echad, midover abo imo b'kli echad. Now, when you're miskadesh a mincha, the levon and the salt are in the same kli. The wood is not miskadesh in a kli. So now this gives us some ammunition to compare the salt to the levona and say, Madoch by the levona has to bring them from his house, so to the salt. Talmud Lomer bris melach oilam hi. Ulahalan oimer meis bnei Yisrael bris oilam. That's the lechem aponim. So Mala Halam Mishal Tzibur, there the lechem aponim comes from the funds of the Tzibur, Tzmeis Bnei Yisrael, Avkan Mishal Tzibur. So here we learn that the melach also can come from the Beis Hamikdash's assets. Arle Rav Mordechai Ravashi. Hachi Komer Rav Shisha Breid Ravidi. This halacha that we said, all of a sudden we came up and said the Kohanim can benefit from the salt. They can have ano. Lo nitzroch el ben Bukhri. This is a unique shita who held that Kohanim do not have to give the machtis shekel. Gans Klal Yisrael, we learned in Masechta Shkolim, has to give a machtis shekel, and with that they bought all of the things that the Beis Hamikdash needed. But in Bukhri holds, the Kohanim don't have to do it. We'll see why. And then, therefore, it's according to it's that shita of Ben Bukhri where we said that the Kohanim can benefit from salt. This Na'am Rav Yehuda. Heid Ben Bukhri b'Yavna. Ben Bukhri was one of the Talmidei Chachamim in Yavna. Kol kohen sheshoikel ein achote. A coin who gives a machzis shekel is not a sinner. But it implies that there's no chiyuv that they have to do it. If they give it, fine. And they're not going against anything. But there's no chiyuv for him to give it. It says over there by the Shkolim, Zeyitnu, Kala Oiver Lapkudim. Whoever was counted. The Kohanim were not counted in when they counted Klal Yisrael. So they're not in the parsha of giving a machzis shekel. Levium too, because they also weren't counted. Amar ben Zakkai, who was the one who asked Emperor Vespasian, Tein li Yavna v'chachamea. So we shouldn't be surprised that Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai is in this story about Ben Bukhri b'Yavna. Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai is the one who set up Yavna. He said low key. He didn't agree. Ela kol koin shein shokel chote. Any coin doesn't give the machzis a shekel is a sinner. They are chayiv to bring it. Ze yitnu. He says Ze refers to the 12 Shvatim, which includes Levi, which includes the Kohanim. That's Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai's limud. So Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai is going to explain why they had this concept of Ben Bukhri that perhaps they weren't chayiv. Ela shakwanim dorshin mikra zelatzman. They had a pasuk that they darshan to benefit from themselves. to try to avoid paying the Machzis shekel. It says, V'chol minchas kohen kalil tiyelo sechel. When a kohen donates a mincha, contrary to a Jew who was allowed to eat the shirayim, his mincha has to be burned. It's not eaten. Now, if they would have participated in the Machzis shekel, korbanos that were bought with that, they would be part owners. And there are certain minchas that are tzibur dika. Hoil the oimer, the minchas oimer is brought on the 16th day of Nisan to be matir the chodesh. You have the shtei alechem that's brought on Shavuos. The lechem aponim. If we contribute the Machzis shekel, we're going to be part owners in that. Shalonuhi. And the problem is, heich necholin. The halacha is we're allowed to eat the shiraim of the minchas oimer and the shtei lechem and the lechem aponim. But the question is, if they are owners of it, it's going to be considered a minchas kohanim, and they can't be eaten. So heich necholim, because we just learned the din that when a kohen donates a mincha, it's completely burned. Must be that the kohanim, they learned on their own for their own benefit. They don't have to be makriv. They don't have to contribute the Machzis shekel. Now, Ula ben Bukhri, who held that they're not obligated. There was never a chiyuv for them to bring it. So kimaisi namechotuhu. So if he brings it, he's like a sinner. Why? Because it doesn't really become kodshim, and is become ma'ayel chulun lazora. You're bringing not kodshim because he's not really obligated to bring the Machzis shekel. When he brings it, it's really not appropriate. So the coin does not belong to Hegdish, really. He's bringing chulun to the Azara. So the Maisiu Masr Lahon L'tzibur. They bring the Machzis shekel, but they give it over with a full heart to the tzibur. So therefore, it's not considered that they brought chulun lazora. And that's why he stated that if the kohen brought a mincha, at least he's not a sinner. Because we assume that he gave it with his whole heart. Okay. Stop here.
Shkoyach, 7:30.
7:30 tonight with your wives. It's a beautiful shiur tonight on Rav Kook by our guest, Rav Doron Podlashek. He's the head of the Tzurba Institute in Yerushalayim that we learned from. Some of you have met him before. He was here when he gave out those certificates for the people who finished Yoredeya, and we finished some of Or Chaim. So I encourage everyone to come. There's nice refreshments. Tomorrow will be 7 o'clock, the Daf, and 8 o'clock will be Tzurba.
Okay.
Okay.